You need to go out into nature and scream. You can use this with discretion. I had a client who was just suffering from insurmountable problems, and she went out into over the ocean to scream. And there was a lot of resistance to it because we're taught to suffer in silence. Have you been suffering in silence? So make some noise. And the reason you need to make noise is because the whole physiology is wired around suffering in silence. If something happened to you and you had to keep quiet about it, that blocks up your voice over time. So how do you free yourself of that? You move the energy through the voice and out in such a way that you're aware and conscious. And as you do this, you start to like reclaim the pieces of your body that were locked down. When she did this, she said she felt a whole energy tingle and her relationship was transformed. More challenges came. That's the nature of life. However, we often accumulate traumas faster than we can release anything. So I'm always an advocate of finding ways to release things powerfully. Primal scream therapy in the 70s was one thing, and that I think that's powerful in a sense. Maybe people overdid it as they overdo everything and it led back into some kind of traumas. In my experience, vocalizing what you've been suffering for in a conscious way helps heal the thing. So what have you been suffering for and how can you vocalize it? I often advocate, and I did in my Flow in Illuminated Training Manual book, speaking the unsaid. Like you're carrying and you're weighed down with all of these stories that are keeping you locked in the past. And a lot of them have to do with, what do you wish you could say to this person? This thing that you wish you could say to this person has not been said, therefore it's incomplete. So when you carry something too long, your body consciousness has to kind of go around that, and that'll create asymmetries in your body. I think of this 11:11 thing you see on the clock when you're in those mystified moments as something like a return to symmetry. There you go. So say the unsaid. People, your parent not here, your daughter not here, etc. Say the unsaid. I often work with clients and I say, what would you say to that person? You have one more chance to meet in the soul realm. What would you say to that person? This question itself brings up tears generally. What would you say to that person? I would say, I'm so sorry, I really miss you. There's usually something about that Ho'oponopono prayer. I love you, I'm sorry. Please forgive me, thank you. It's usually some variant of that. What would you say? This is the question that helps you say the unsaid and heal what has been healed. I'm thinking about my grandfather, so I'm feeling a little bit teary. And when I say, what would you say? I would say, Grandpa, I love you and miss you. I'm so sorry that happened to you toward the end. You made my life a beautiful place. I learned so many lessons from you. Thank you for working so hard for us. Now, I have someone close their eyes and say that and imagine them. Thank you, grandfather, for what people will do is they'll say, thank you. What he did was, and they're telling me. And I said, no. Say this thing to him or her. And the reason I don't have them look at me is because they start to project things onto me. So you close your eyes, you see the person, and you start to talk. The first time I did this, it was about my chihuahua. And I really miss you, Izzy, little creature, because I left you with someone, and I'm so sorry. Because we were really bonded, and I ended up having to leave. And I was like, why am I crying about a little tiny chihuahua? I could never access this state of emotion. And that led me to another thing. So sometimes when people start sharing, they're really locked down, right? If you haven't felt emotion for a while, you're really locked down. Sometimes even people's parents die and they don't grieve in the moment. They're really locked down. I had a client who hadn't grieved her parents, and we found that in her shoulder where her father had pulled her across the street when she was a child, I just tugged on the shoulder and all the grief came out. The body will carry the grief until you're ready. Where it carries it is somewhat mysterious. So a lot of times, a client, I'd be tugging the shoulder, I'd be sharing, like, share so-and-so, you lost so-and-so, that sounds very sad. And they're unable to access emotion, so it's because we project so much. Humans are jerks, I'm not gonna feel. And then if you bring it to an animal, 100% of the time, the emotion comes. So if you are locked up in this process, you may or may not be sharing the unsaid, I call it. Say the unsaid. What you do is you bring up the animal. What about that horse you had when you were a kid? What about that cat? What happened to that cat? Did you blame someone for what happened? What do you want to say to that animal? I'm so sorry we had to put you down, etc. That always brings up the emotion. Once the emotion's flowing, you can channel it to any other place. One of my jobs is to get people moving in their emotional body. Once the emotional body moves in an energetic capacity, healing happens. And healing does not happen until the emotional body moves. That's it. There's no healing while we're avoiding emotion. I find that to be impossible. And so the first step in a consult or whatever, let's get some emotion moving so I can see where you are, where you're stuck, where you have been stuck. Emotion moving always starts to open up channels when it's conscious. A lot of times people have emotion moving, they're like shutting it down, they're trying to swallow. People often swallow, they're going to get thyroid issues potentially. So how do you feel fully with your body? It's the purpose is to find the standing and flow. I do a holistic postural analysis. Find ways where you're holding, ways where you're free, and feel fully in full freedom, like full flow of tears. Can you cry with your whole body? Most people cannot. Most people are shut down with that. So what I was saying was, usually when we're feeling emotion, we cry a little bit, then we swallow, then we stop ourselves. Why are you stopping yourself? It's because that's what we've been trained to do. Stop ourselves from feeling emotion, especially men, but also women. This embodied masculine thing, the embodied man project, we're going to feel more. And that's a beautiful, powerful thing. I used to be in men's circles in Berkeley, and we'd all work on trying to cry because no one could. And then once people broke free of this, you'd cry at everything. And I've been through long meditations. I cried at a flower. I cried at some seagulls. Life is beautiful, rich tapestry of meaning. You should cry sometimes. At the birth of your daughter, cry. Like part of living in our head too much, we need to balance that with the heart center. Come back. So this is an invitation for you to feel more fully. Whether you're a man or a woman, wherever you're stuck, feel more fully. Usually I talk to people that are older because younger people haven't reached you don't reach the crisis of like what not feeling for 10 or 20 years does to your body and mind. What not expressing, stuck in a relationship, rigid, frozen, etc. So find the person you need to speak to, release blame. I'll put a link to the journey book in the description because I have tracking and releasing blame in the journey book. If you're stuck somewhere in life, in general, there's unresolved blame and there's saying things that are unsaid. Absolutely. There's no way around that. You can say the unsaid thing tersely and without emotion. It won't move the equation until you find a way to get into the emotion. You can do this yourself. However, it's very challenging and difficult. Most people cannot do this. I could not do it myself either. Even with that dog, someone was facilitating. And when I said like, I miss that dog, they're like, say more. I'm like, oh, right. I just needed someone there to say more. Why aren't you saying the whole thing? Why aren't you saying the whole thing? Say more. You can watch this again. Adhere to the principles. I do this standing, feet hip width apart, knees soft, rocking. This is what I call standing in flow. Chest up and not collapsed. I'm trying to fit into the camera here, so it's not the best. And we make the feet parallel, lift the arches. You're strong, you're powerful, beautiful, and brave. I say that frequently because that's what you are. So your essence, that piece of you flows through all the trauma, all the grief, and reaches this other person in their state of wherever they are. If they're alive or not alive, none of that matters. You'd think it was easier to do this when people are alive. However, it's not. It's hard in general because I'm going to say this, I expect this reaction. They're not going to react right now. You say your truth, you honor your truth from your perspective, and you speak what needs to be said for you. And then you'll see if there's a reaction energetically. You'll see if there's more to share. Like, I jokingly say, we think ghosts are haunting us and we're haunting them. Like, you need to let go of some things and the ghosts go away. Generally speaking, you are free. So, thank you so much. I'm Stephen Budden. I hope that helped you. If you're bound up in your body and mind, you're stuck somewhere, you're having trouble emotionally expressing, or your relationship patterns keep showing up. It should help. It helps when I do it with clients. Let me know if you have questions in the comments. I love you. I'll see you on the other side.